You know Johnson & Johnson. Chances are you've got their Band-Aids or Tylenol in a drawer somewhere right now. But what you might not know is that this iconic company is in the middle of one of the biggest corporate transformations we've seen in years. So today, we're going to break down how this healthcare giant is hitting the reset button to try and dominate the future. And really, the entire story boils down to this one kind of weird question. How does a company worth $500 billion get bigger by first getting smaller? Now that sounds like a riddle, right? But it's not. It is the absolute heart of a massive high-stakes bet Johnson & Johnson is making on its own future. Let's dig in. All right, so why make such a huge change in the first place? I mean, a company this successful doesn't just wake up and decide to reinvent itself for fun. The truth is, they were facing a couple of really big problems that were threatening their entire business model. Okay, problem number one has this kind of boring business school name, the conglomerate discount. But the idea is actually pretty simple. You had Wall Street looking at J&J, which was selling everything from high-tech cancer drugs to baby shampoo, and they were basically scratching their heads. The company was just too complex. And because of that confusion, investors were valuing the company for less than what its individual pieces were actually worth. Now, the second problem was a lot more serious. It's called the patent cliff. A patent on a drug is basically a license to print money for a few years. But when that patent expires, cheaper generic versions hit the market and your revenue just falls off a cliff. Well, one of J&J's biggest moneymakers, a drug called Stelara, was about to go right over that cliff. That was a huge threat to their bottom line. So you've got these two big pressures building up. What do? Well, Johnson & Johnson made a really bold first move. They decided that the best way to add value was actually to subtract a huge piece of their company. And this slide right here shows you the before and after perfectly. On the left, that's the old J&J. It was like a stable three-legged stool. You had advanced medicine, medical tech, and of course, all those consumer brands we know. On the right, that's the new J&J. They took that whole consumer division and spun it off into a brand new company called Kenvue. What's left is a much leaner, much more focused company. And this wasn't just about tidying up the org chart. This one move instantly generated over $13 billion in cash. So think about that. This spinoff wasn't just about getting rid of the slower-growing part of the business. It was about raising a massive war chest to fund the next, way more aggressive phase of their plan. So what do you do when you suddenly have an extra $13 billion lying around? Well, J&J went shopping. And this wasn't like buying a few small startups. This was a highly targeted, high-tech shopping spree. They aimed all of that firepower at one specific area, cardiovascular technology. And they made two gigantic acquisitions, one right after the other. First, they snapped up a company called Abiomed. Then, they turned around and bought another one called Shockwave Medical. This was a clear one-two punch designed to make them a powerhouse in heart-related medical devices. And just look at the price tags here. We are talking about a nearly $30 billion investment. That is more than double the cash they got from spinning off their entire consumer business. So this wasn't some small adjustment. This was an all-in bet on the future of medtech. So what did they get for all that cash? Some seriously futuristic tech. From Abiomed, they got the Impella heart pump. It's the smallest in the world, and it helps patients recover from things like heart attacks. And from Shockwave, they got this wild technology that uses sonic waves, kind of like a tiny jackhammer inside your arteries to break up calcium blockages. Just incredible stuff. Okay, so buying up cutting-edge companies is one thing, but that wasn't enough. The third, and maybe most important piece of J&J's new strategy was to massively increase their own ability to create the next big breakthrough. It was time to bet big on their own internal science. This chart of their 2023 revenue says it all. You see what's missing, right? That consumer health slice is totally gone. Now, their entire $85 billion engine is driven by just two things: innovative medicine and medtech. That's it. This isn't just a financial snapshot. This is their new identity. And they are pouring fuel on that engine like you wouldn't believe. In just 1 year, they invested a mind-blowing $15.1 billion into R&D. To put that in perspective, that's almost 18 cents of every single dollar they earned going right back into the lab. That is one of the highest rates in the industry. It's an enormous bet on their own scientists. And the goal of all that spending? It's not just to make slightly better drugs. They're chasing what they call transformational therapies. They're going after the toughest diseases out there, like cancer and autoimmune disorders. and they're doing it with something called precision medicine, basically creating treatments designed for a person's unique genetic code. So you take all these moves, you subtract the consumer brands, you add these huge tech companies, and you pour gasoline on the R&D fire? What do you get? Well, you get a new kind of Johnson & Johnson, a new kind of giant. I absolutely love this quote because it perfectly sums up the entire strategy. The old J&J, that was the safe and sturdy three-legged stool. You knew what you were getting. But this new J&J, they've traded that stability for the raw power and speed of a high-tech, dual-engine jet aimed right at the future of healthcare. And that really leaves us with the billion-dollar question, doesn't it? By getting rid of that reliable safety net of consumer brands, has J&J brilliantly secured its future in the fast-paced world of pharma and tech? Or has it just made itself more vulnerable to the next big market shift? It's a fascinating, high-stakes case study, and the final chapter hasn't been written yet. So what do you think of the move?